Hello, thank you for joining me today for another episode of Vinland Saga. All right, let's get right into it. I need to address the subtitles. I've used at this point in time, I've used two different subtitles, right? Essentially, there's different opinions. Some people like the original subtitles I was using, some like the new ones I'm using, but a lot of people don't like the new ones I'm using. And also, it kind of comes down to your own experience, right? If you've experienced it with a certain set of subtitles, then everything that doesn't kind of match that is going to feel kind of out of place to you, right? So I thought the best solution here is to just go out and grab the Blu-ray. And I'm a fan of physical media anyways, and this is a series I really like already, so I was more than happy to grab the Blu-ray. But the Blu-ray is essentially the most recent official subtitles, right? So yeah, from this point on, it's going to be the official Blu-ray subtitles. I checked out some of the subtitles for some of the older episodes. The only thing that might get a bit of getting used to is the yellow shade of the subtitles. It really sticks out like a sore thumb, but it is what it is. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that real quick, give you that update about the subtitles. Also, if you're interested in full length or early access, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Okay, that's about it for this intro. Let's get right into the episode. I hope you enjoy. Look at this. The land on the far bank.
あんた方デエンジンですな。なかなか達者なイングランド語を話されるが、少しなまっていらっしゃる。私の国のなまりに似ている。
いや、にはこの手紙だけです。
Whoa. That looks quite official.
これを対岸のどなたへ？
元老のどなたかへ大至急。
Elders.
アシュラッドからとお伝えいただきたい。
Son of Lydia. Yeah. So he recognizes the armor, huh? Askeladd, son of Lydia. Didn't say son of Ulf. This time at least.
早いな。よほどの強行軍なんだろうぜ。この分だと少しのうちに追いつかれるな。援軍を要請しました。
Ah, okay.
逃げ回りましょうや。は？援軍？
Bjorn's reaction. Huh?
あいつがその手の嘘を言ったことあるか？
おお、まあねえな、確かに。
This should be cool, man. Reinforcements. Ha, Lester.
2週間はかかるぞ。
Kind of reminds me of Tyrion. Early Game of Thrones. There's that scene. Him and Jon Snow.
なんだ、何か用か。なんだよ。他に用がねえならお前も寝ろ。あんた、ここ数日ちょっと変だぞ。
Yeah.
何考えてる？
There it is. Bjorn. He's always in a position to demand some
王
answers.
子の顔を見てからだ。そうだろ。俺は悪党の中で40年余り生きてきてな。そいつがどんなやつなのか、大物か小物か、利口かバカか、パッと見ただけで分かっちゃう。
Okay, so his read on Canute then. Let's hear it.
王子の面見てな、分かっちまったんだよ。王者の面じゃねえってな。ああ、まあ女みてえな面だよな。
Yeah.
だがよ、あれはまだガキじゃねえか。まあ、そうだな。まだ若い。これからだ。これからって。よし、起きろ、野郎ども。
He immediately got up after that, huh? His time is yet to come.
まだ真っ暗じゃねえか。
Man, I really like Bjorn. Oh. This is a new type of score. Wow. Almost kind of sounds like Gustavo's music.
眠れたか？
いや。
なあ。
うるせえな。黙ってろよ。
いや、喋ってねえと眠っちまいそうでさ。
Wow. Loving this presentation for this specific episode.
これそこ。
Whoa. columns. Whoa.
自らおいでくださるとは恐縮です。
久しいな、アシュラッド。
Reinforcements. Oh, look at this. Okay.
まあ何にしろトルフィンたちの足跡をたどることはできなくなったな。
Thorfinn and Co.
ちーっと奴らのことは侮ってたな。まさかセバン川の向こう岸を味方につけてるとはな。願えるも何もこの川の向こうはそもそもイングランドじゃねえんだぜ。ウェールズってんだ。
Ah. Nice.
褒めて使わすぞアシェラッド。今頃トルケルメは川の向こうではがみしておるだろうて。あとは
Not
この
quite.
まま回路を行けばゲインズバラへ帰れるというわけだ。いえ、こっからはまた陸路です。大国の物差しで考えちゃいけませんよ。この国にとって軍船3隻や貴重な戦力なんです。トルケルを巻くのに協力してくれただけでもよしとしなけりゃ。
はやぶさ、
Oh,
あんなに低く。
finally
ラグ
spoke.
ナル、捕まえてくれ。
殿下大事な話を。それでも心配だとおっしゃるならトルフィー、
Ah.
このものをクヌート殿下にお伝え
Got
します。
ourselves a bodyguard for Prince Canute.
殿下とは年も同じなので気が合うでしょう。ご挨拶しろトルフィン。アホか。メンチ切ってどうすんだよおめえはよ。こちらはモルガンクーグ王国の将軍グラティアヌス殿。我らの
Gratianus.
道案内をしてくださいます。
ほう、少し剣があるが良い顔だ。
軍団長殿、それは私の部下です。
Oh yeah. This is gonna happen a lot to Prince Canute.
目に力がない。本当に時代のイングランドを滑るものか。我らがデンの王子の逃避行に協力する理由は一つ。ウェールズへの不可侵条約の締結だ。すべては気候次第。王子よ、誓われよ。イングランドの王となった暁には、決してウェールズには干渉
Oh,
せん。
in case he become king. Oh, he'll become king, all right.
そなたらが船3隻を提供するならば。
私は王子本人に聞いているの
Ah,
だ。
right. Can he not speak himself? I've seen that before.
そりゃおめえスベン王のご褒美だよ。俺たちはあのトルケルから王子を救ったんだぜ。
農場の一つももらいたいもんだ。かっちょいい剣とか。
Cool sword.
やっぱり黄金よ。
Ascalon is probably not thinking of any of these things.
なんでも王の寝室には世界中からさらってきた美女の奴隷が100人もいるってよ。
いやまあこれといって価値のありそうなものはなかったですよ。
あんた女に興味ないのか。
Oh boy, this should be interesting.
私の求めているものに比べれば金銀も美女もつまらないものだということです。
ぜひ教えてくれ。一体それは何なんだ。
They're gonna laugh at him, regardless of his answer.
愛です。
愛なんだそれ。聞いたことね。
Okay,
知ってる。
you have to
キ
understand
リ
it
スト教
to.
徒がよく言う呪文かなんかだよ。
もんじゃねえの。
銀に価値を与えるのも愛だからです。愛なくしては金も銀も美女もすべて無価値だ。
坊さん、おい。続けてくれよ今の話。もう少し聞きたいんだ。
Nice.
ご尽力痛み入ります。
お前たちのためではない。利害の一致だ。ウェールズ諸王国はかねてよりイングランドの侵攻に苦しめられてきた。あれがお前のかアシェランド。
血筋は申し分はありません。あとはまあ若さに期待しています。
Huh.
惚れた男ほど思い通りにはならんもんです。案外あのくらいの器の方がちょうどいいのかもしれません。
我らは 誇りあるブリタニアの末裔だ。伝の王には従わぬぞ。
未だ伝説を信じておいでですか。アルトリウス公が西の彼方のアバロンから戻られ、
Whoa. Oh,
ブ
Excalibur.
リタニアを復興なさるという伝説を。
Oh, so is it meant to be King Arthur? Arturios? The legend of King Arthur?
グリケイニオングの使いの者だ。出迎えご苦労。
お待ちを、グラティアヌス殿。
Oh boy.
気づいたか。
なぜわかる？
部下に耳の良い者がおります。
どうしたトロフィー？
Get ready. How about this? How about this? Really similar to... Whoa, okay. Oh, that's great. That's a great shot right there. Oh! Leif Erikson! Oh, he's gonna test Thorfinn. Yes. Or he thought he saw Thorfinn, but no, then he saw that it's not. He's been in this situation before. Similar situation. As a young child. Okay, let's get into it. You know, that ending, that montage, kind of establishing all the major players at this moment in time, their positions, you know, their actual like physical location and their positions in the story, right? Of course, you know, absolutely fantastic to see a bit of a connection from the past, right? From Thorfinn's past. Leif Erikson, he's, I mean, clearly he's aged quite a bit. It has been quite a bit of time, right? Since the last time I saw Leif Erikson, the last time Leif Erikson saw Thorfinn, right? So yes, I guess it's been, yeah, certainly been more than a decade. So yeah, he's out here, right? He promised Helga and Ylva that he'll do everything possible to find Thorfinn and bring him back. And you could tell that he's probably run into this situation a few times at this point. You know, seeing people or children that kind of resemble Thorfinn. Imagine that, right? His heart must be in his mouth every time that happens. And you see his reaction a bit later, right after he realizes that's not Thorfinn. Just that, you know, that frustration, that disappointment in himself as well, right? That he still hasn't found Thorfinn. So yeah, you know, it's great to see that. It really took me by surprise because, again, you know, it almost kind of felt like the story's moved on to this story, and it has. And then, of course, for that reason, it was really such a pleasant surprise to see Leif Erikson again. So, you know, him being kind of reestablished here in this, essentially, it is a mid-season finale from the looks of it, from how I felt at the end there, right? And it is essentially exactly at the midpoint, 12 episodes in, so that's exciting for me as well, you know, that I am at the midpoint now. So it certainly sets up a potential reunion, right? Leif Erikson and Thorfinn, but of course it is going to be tricky, right? A bit complicated given Thorfinn's current objectives and his the path he's on, essentially, you know, and his state of mind. So, you know, that is really interesting, that prospect of them potentially running into each other down the line. Before Thorfinn feels like he's ready to move on, right? Again, as of this point, his goal is to, you know, vengeance is still on his mind. So let's see, you know, they've set that up now. But yeah, you know, beyond Leif Erikson, they showed us King Sven once again. They showed us Thorkel, of course. He has to go around, essentially. And, you know, I loved how Thorkel doesn't even really pay attention to Askeladd anymore. Now it's all about running into Thorfinn and crew, or co. Again, you know, he knows now that Thorfinn is related to him, and he has quite a bit of respect for the warrior Thorfinn has become. So yeah, you know, certainly looking forward to their next meeting. And of course, beyond the montage, it's quite the cliffhanger, right? Almost literally, it's quite the cliffhanger because they're surrounded on all sides, and it was kind of reminiscent of some of the early episodes as Thor's and young Thorfinn at the time, and some of those other men, including Leif Erikson, get trapped or surrounded by Askeladd's men, right, on those cliffs. So certainly quite the setup there for the next episode. And this episode kind of continued that deliberate pacing that I really enjoyed and appreciated in the last episode. More of the same in this episode. There's a lot of conversations going on. There's no, quick cuts or anything. It really allows it to sit, right? It really allows these conversations to play out naturally. It has this authentic feel to it, doesn't it? A lot of times, there's no need for background music even, right? But of course, speaking of the music, it continues to be incredible, right? It is one of the best soundtracks, one of the best original scores for any anime that I've, watched so far, or for anything really. It's just phenomenal. And there's such a fantastic range of music in this, right? In the score. And I see it kind of at play in this episode. Of course, that big reveal of his reinforcements as those two figures appear in the fog. That frame in itself, that visual in itself is such a standout image, right, of the series, of the show. And again, I mentioned the score. Let's move on to the visuals. The visuals, oh my goodness, the backgrounds, one after another, nonstop. This is just incredible stuff. It's jaw-dropping stuff. It really is. But yeah, the visual side, the production quality of this, the score, the animation quality, and once again, I mentioned a few episodes ago, or I think I've mentioned a few times now, the facial animation is so important in this series, in this anime, because there's a lot of subtle reactions going on here, through characters like Askeladd. There is so much going on there through Askeladd's expressions, and this has been an ongoing thing now. It's not something new, but it's still noticeable, right? Anytime, there's a lot of moments you'll notice in the composition or the framing of the shot, him kind of in the background, right? His reactions are so important. There's so much to read into those subtle reactions of his. And again, Bjorn as well. So, of course, the visual storytelling continues to be just fantastic. Now, before I go any further, I should preface this by saying that maybe this is the first time in the series that I kind of felt a bit handicapped in terms of some of the history that is being depicted here or being, pulled from. Again, I mentioned I'm never going to pretend to know more than I do. So I'm going to be just straight up about that. I feel like I can't really add much to that side of things. The historic elements of this and the things they're pulling from. Some of the geography is not something I can really add to either, again, to be honest. So in that sense, I'm almost kind of like a bit disappointed in myself that I'm not able to really add to that aspect of this anime. But, it is what it is. I just don't know enough to add to that aspect of it. And of course, another thing I can't really, pretend to really know about are the battle tactics. That's just not my thing, right? So I can't really add much to that side of things. It's not really something I can really apologize for because I don't know enough to add to any of that. But, I can be upfront about it and let you know that, yeah, I'm not going to pretend to know. And, in that sense, I can probably learn from you guys in the comments. I'm sure many of you know a lot of this history or a lot of the history it's pulling from. So, yeah, I'm certainly open to that. So, feel free to leave your comments as long as they don't allude to things that might happen down the line. I know history is history, right? It's a real deal. Though, of course, it's probably a mix of it in this story. But, speaking of history or backstory, ooh, this was exciting. This was exciting because there's certainly a major focus on Askeladd. From the last few episodes, it's starting to feel like that is the focus as of this point, right? Askeladd. This episode certainly put the spotlight firmly on Askeladd. And, in terms of getting a bit of backstory about Askeladd, there's a lot of really interesting things going on here. I learned that he actually might have two different backgrounds here, right? This time he name drops. He mentions Lydia, his mother, right? Askeladd, son of Lydia, instead of dropping his father's name, Askeladd, son of Ulf, right? Because clearly that is not significant here. It doesn't matter here. right? Here, Lydia matters, right? That is clearly a name or a person that is significant to the people or the elders he's kind of sending the message out to, right? Through the old timer who recognizes his accent as well, right? He said, "Oh, you kind of sound like the people back in my home country." So he recognized the accent, Askeladd's accent. So yeah, that in itself is quite interesting that he comes from two different backgrounds. And, of course, before this, he didn't name drop Son of Lydia. Before it was all about, Son of Ulf. And then, at times he's also, name dropped Arturios in the name of my ancestor Arturios, right? So yeah, Askeladd, this is quite the fascinating character. There's so much there. And of course, speaking of his ancestor Arturios, it appears that it's meant to be King Arthur, right? Because they showed Excalibur, right? So I'm guessing it's kind of like a take on King Arthur. Though of course, there's no one definitive myth about King Arthur. There's a lot of different takes on that, right? In terms of the details, but yeah, that was pretty clear cut. That was Excalibur in the stone. Now let me jump to Canute, because it was great to finally get a little something on Canute. Still early stages, right? He's just kind of breaking out of his shell, and in that sense, you see that there is a lot of judgment going on here, be it because of his physical appearance, his demeanor, his shyness, his struggle with public speaking, right? All of that is certainly being noticed, and people are judging that. You see that a lot of really experienced people here don't really see a future king in the making, right? To them, he just doesn't really fit the bill, doesn't fit the profile, doesn't have the qualities, right? But then again, it goes back to my point from the last episode. It's kind of like a long game, but the deconstruction is already at play, and I think Thorfinn being paired up with Canute is so fantastic, isn't it? And of course, Askeladd, he's got his own reasons for it, right? It's not just as simple as him being a bodyguard. Yes, that's going to play a part, but there's certainly more than meets the eye there. He wants Thorfinn to be there, beside Canute, right? And he wants Canute to be there beside Thorfinn, because I think he believes that, okay, Canute can learn from Thorfinn, that Canute maybe needs a friend, someone of his age. It already has kind of like the beginning stages of, oh, okay, right now they're kind of, butting heads. They're kind of the polar opposites at this point. But I feel like, this dynamic of Canute and Thorfinn has a lot of potential, right, to grow over the next few episodes. I feel like over time, there is going to be some semblance of a bond that is going to develop. I think Canute specifically might come to really appreciate Thorfinn, right? Thorfinn is certainly an interesting figure, right? So, people like Canute and Lord Ragnar might be quite interested in learning more about Thorfinn. But I think Canute specifically is going to become quite interested in Thorfinn. And, to me, it kind of feels like the early stages of potential friendship or potential, understanding is there. And, there's a funny moment there as, Askeladd kind of calls Thorfinn up, tells him to say hello. Almost kind of felt like, a father calling his son up. And you see Bjorn is standing there too, like another father in the back there, right? And he got a kick out of Thorfinn's, mean mugging of Prince Canute. So great little moment there. It's Askeladd, right? So of course there is a strategic element to this, sending Thorfinn there to have him in the presence of Canute as much as possible. It's been clear for a long time that there's always more than meets the eye with Askeladd. And, speaking of Canute and expectation and the judgment that's being passed, there's a really interesting moment as Askeladd kind of, he has a quick flash of Thor's, and, in that sense, you see just how much Thor's is still, having this lasting effect on Askeladd. He mentioned that, the more you expect from a man, the less things go the way you want them to go. So, in that sense, maybe Canute is just the right type of person at this moment in time for this moment in time. And of course, going back to my initial point about there potentially being some sort of bond or understanding or connection being created between Canute and Thorfinn, that's a plus for Askeladd as well, because Thorfinn is his man essentially, right? Even though, there's always this talk of, well, I'm not one of you. Essentially, he is part of Askeladd's crew, right? So yeah, it's a plus for Askeladd as well. And, I mentioned the deliberate pacing a bit earlier. Again, it's there's this stretch of the episode that almost kind of felt like a dream sequence, right? It was just so effective. Kind of like just the cycle of day and night, and the men are exhausted, and the men themselves are kind of just in and out, right? They're kind of almost forgetting track of time. I really enjoyed that sequence. It really reminded me of some of those long stretches from Apocalypse Now. It really had that same feeling about it. And speaking of the men, Askeladd's men, I love how this anime, the story, doesn't just focus on the major characters. Of course, a lot of the screen time goes to them, but they always find time. There's always time for some of the men, right? And I'm even speaking of the men below Bjorn and those twins, right? You see that they do take the time to establish their goals and their thoughts on the matters, right? There is a portion here as some of the men are, speaking of or, discussing Askeladd's reinforcement plan, right? And giving their thoughts on it. And then, there's a great scene later. It was really almost kind of like a continuation of that scene from the last episode, right? Thorkel and his men speaking with Lord Ragnar or the priest. And, speaking of the priest, after this episode, he has kind of been established as one of the most interesting side characters of the show, of this story, because some of the things he's saying here and, his take on love, that is certainly something I hope continues, that discussion that's happening here, his take on love. And I feel like there is a connection to be made here to Thor's, that whole notion that you have no enemies, no one has enemies, kind of like a universal love almost, right? And to me, it feels like maybe this priest is also speaking of, he has a name, but I can't quite remember the name, but I'm going to call him priest for now. It appears that his, idea of love is also one of unconditional love for all people, right? So I think there is a bit of a parallel to Thor's and his stance, right? And his teachings, his ideology, essentially. So yeah, so much like the men that kind of urged the priest to continue his thoughts, I'm in the same boat. I hope his thoughts continue in the next few episodes. Yeah, there's a lot of potential there, I think. A lot of interesting things are possible through this side character, essentially. Again, that's one of the great things about this anime, this story, how these characters are being utilized. But yeah, another really enjoyable episode, a great episode, great setup there for the next episode and beyond as well, right? And it was really, really exciting to, get some of this backstory or some of these connections to Askeladd. Right then, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. And once again, I'm completely open to learning more about some of the historical references here, as long as they're spoiler free, of course. Please and thank you. If you're interested in early access or perhaps even full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Also, there's a link to my Twitter page if you're into that, into social media. So consider checking that out. But yeah, that's about it for this one. Let me know what you thought of the subtitles. It is, once again, like I mentioned, it is the most recent official source for the subtitles. Yeah, maybe the yellow might get a bit of getting used to, but this is as official as it gets and as recent as it gets. So yeah, I'm gonna stick to these. But thank you for checking that out, and I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.